Randolph Scott's painful secret was revealed before his tragic death. Randolph Scott was born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898 in Orange County, Virginia. He grew up in a well-to-do Southern family before moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he spent most of his youth. Scott's father was a textile executive, and his family provided him with a comfortable upbringing that allowed him to attend prestigious schools. He briefly studied engineering and business at Georgia Tech and the University of North Carolina before serving in World War I, where he developed the quiet confidence and discipline that would later define his on-screen persona. After the war, Scott returned home uncertain about his future until a chance meeting with film star Howard Greer inspired him to move to Hollywood. That decision changed the course of his life forever. Scott's early years in Hollywood were modest. He started out as an extra, often taking small, uncredited parts while studying acting and developing his craft. His tall, athletic build, classic good looks, and dignified Southern accent soon caught the attention of casting directors. He was cast in a variety of supporting roles during the 1920s and early 1930s, frequently appearing in adventure films and dramas. However, it was in the Western genre that Randolph Scott found his true home and identity. His first significant Western roles in films such as The Last Roundup, 1934, and The Desperado, 1943, revealed a natural affinity for the genre. He embodied the stoic cowboy hero with authenticity and quiet intensity. Over the years, his reputation grew as audiences admired his integrity, toughness, and understated acting style. By the late 1930s and into the 1940s, Randolph Scott had firmly established himself as one of the leading men of the silver screen. Unlike many actors who were typecast and confined to formulaic roles, Scott brought nuance to the Western archetype. He wasn't just a gunslinger or lawman. He was often portrayed as a man with a moral compass, shaped by hardship and guided by justice. His work with directors like Henry Hathaway and later Bud Boetticher resulted in some of the most critically acclaimed westerns ever made. Films such as Ride Lonesome 1959, The Tall T 1957, and Comanche Station 1960 are now considered masterpieces of the genre. These collaborations emphasized human emotion, solitude, and redemption more than gunplay, allowing Scott to deliver performances that were deeply introspective and emotionally rich. Randolph Scott's personal life, though often overshadowed by his long and distinguished film career, reflected a complex mixture of romance, discretion, and stability that mirrored the man himself. His first marriage was to Marion DuPont, a woman of remarkable stature and independence. Born into the famed DuPont family of Delaware, Marion was an heiress, equestrian, and sportswoman who had inherited the Montpelier estate in Virginia, once the home of President James Madison. The union between Scott and DuPont in 1936 seemed at first glance to be a union of glamour and refinement, a merging of Hollywood charm and old American aristocracy. Their wedding was widely covered in society pages, and fans of Scott, who was already becoming a popular Western star, were fascinated by the pairing of the handsome, soft-spoken actor with the accomplished horsewoman and heiress. However, despite their mutual respect and affection, their marriage was short-lived. Marion DuPont's heart belonged to her horses and her equestrian world, while Scott was increasingly drawn to the demands and routines of his Hollywood career. They were two strong, independent personalities with vastly different lifestyles. She preferred the quiet of Virginia's countryside, over sea, eyeing her stables and breeding racehorses, while he was drawn to the bright lights of California, where his career was taking off rapidly. His death was attributed to heart and lung ailments, conditions that gradually took their toll in his later years. Scott died peacefully in Beverly Hills, California, the same city where he had lived much of his life among the legends of Hollywood's golden age. His passing marked the end of an era, a final farewell to one of the last true icons of the classic American Western. His deep voice, tall frame, and unflinching presence on screen had made him an embodiment of the idealized cowboy hero, and even in his twilight years, he remained a figure of admiration and respect within the entertainment industry. Following his death, Randolph Scott was laid to rest at Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, North Carolina, the state where he was born and raised. The return to his Southern roots reflected the humility that had always defined him despite his fame and success. For Scott, North Carolina was more than just a birthplace. It was a reminder of his upbringing, family values, and the work ethic that had shaped his approach to both life and career. His grave in Charlotte became a quiet place of pilgrimage for devoted fans who wished to pay their respects to the man who had portrayed so many stoic heroes on screen. The cemetery, shaded by tall trees and filled with historic markers, provided a fittingly serene resting place for a man who had always preferred peace and privacy to the noise of fame. The distance, both emotional and geographical, gradually created a rift that neither could bridge. After just 3 years together, the couple divorced in 1939. Although their marriage ended, those who knew them said that they parted amicably without public scandal or bitterness. Marion DuPont went on to become one of the leading figures in American equestrian sports, and Scott continued to build his reputation as one of the most enduring Western heroes of the silver screen. Years later in 1944, Randolph Scott found lasting companionship with Patricia Stillman, a woman who would remain by his side for the rest of his life. Patricia, often described as poised, elegant, and devoted, provided Scott with the sense of stability and warmth that he had been seeking. Their marriage endured for more than 4 decades, a rarity in Hollywood, where celebrity unions often crumble under the pressures of fame and constant scrutiny. Together, they built a quiet and comfortable life away from the limelight, settling in Los Angeles before eventually moving to Beverly Hills. Scott, known for his gentlemanly demeanor and reserved nature, was deeply loyal to Patricia, and friends of the couple often remarked on the affection and mutual respect that defined their marriage. Despite his fame, Scott valued privacy, and he and Patricia were rarely seen at the social events and Hollywood parties that other stars frequented. They preferred to entertain close friends at home, spending evenings together or traveling. Their home became a place of warmth and hospitality, decorated tastefully and reflecting the couple's love for art, horses, and the American West. Scott's later years were marked by a deep sense of contentment, largely because of his marriage to Patricia, who stood by him as his career slowed and eventually ended. The union lasted until Scott's death in 1987, making Patricia Stillman and his lifelong partner and companion through both the triumphs and challenges of Hollywood life. After his passing, Patricia continued to honor his memory, remaining largely out of the public eye, but always speaking with affection and pride about her husband's legacy. Together, they represented one of the rare examples of enduring love and loyalty in the film industry. A bond built not on glamour, but on quiet devotion and mutual understanding. In the twilight years of his life, Hollywood legend Randolph Scott carried with him a secret that had weighed heavily on his heart for decades. A secret that only came to light shortly before his passing. To millions of moviegoers, Scott was the epitome of the strong, silent cowboy, a man of unwavering courage, rugged independence, and stoic dignity. His career had spanned more than 3 decades, and he became one of the most recognized faces of the Western genre. But behind the scenes, away from the dusty trails and silver screens, Scott was a deeply private man who shielded his personal life from the public eye. His silence, however, spoke volumes, and before his death, the truth he had hidden for years finally began to emerge. Scott once confided to a close friend, "People see the cowboy and think they know me, but the man on the screen isn't the man I see in the mirror." Those words, simple yet haunting, revealed a lifetime of inner conflict. For years, Hollywood studios maintained a strict image of their stars, crafting stories that would appeal to audiences and fit the social expectations of the era. For Scott, that meant living under the shadow of secrecy and restraint. He was a man torn between the public figure he was required to be and the private man he truly was. His life became a performance both on and off the screen, and as he aged, that emotional burden only grew heavier. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, Scott's personal life drew endless speculation, particularly because of his unusually close friendship with fellow actor Cary Grant. The two shared a luxurious beach house in Santa Monica for nearly 12 years, a fact that fueled rumors throughout Hollywood. Tabloids of the day referred to them as Hollywood's most peculiar bachelors, while others whispered that their relationship was much deeper than friendship. Scott never directly addressed those rumors, but his gentle tone and subtle admissions later in life seemed to suggest that the bond between the two men had indeed been profound. "Carrie was one of the few people who ever truly understood me," Scott once said quietly. "We laughed together. We argued. We shared dreams. In a town full of masks, he saw the real me." By the 1950s, the world had changed, and so had Scott. He retired from acting after his powerful 1962 film, Ride the High Country, a performance that many critics hailed as a fitting farewell to one of cinema's great Western icons. Yet away from the screen, he was grappling with years of loneliness and reflection. He had married Patricia Stillman in 1944 and remained with her until his death. But by most accounts, their marriage was one of companionship rather than fiery romance. As age crept in and his health declined, Scott became more contemplative, often revisiting the choices he had made and the emotions he had long suppressed. It was during these later years that his closest confidants began to learn the truth about his private sorrow. Scott revealed that for most of his life he had lived in fear of public judgment and rejection. "I grew up in a time when being different was dangerous." He admitted, "You learn to hide, to pretend, and after a while you start to believe the act yourself." His voice, filled with a mix of pride and regret, hinted at the heavy toll that decades of secrecy had taken on him. Hollywood's golden age had not been kind to those who stepped outside its carefully drawn lines, and Scott knew that exposing his true self might have destroyed his career at its height. As his health worsened in the 1970s, Scott withdrew from the public eye almost entirely. Friends described him as quiet but reflective, spending long hours looking out at the California hills he loved so much. Though he rarely spoke of his past, those who were closest to him noticed a sense of peace beginning to replace the lifelong tension he had carried. Perhaps it was because the world had begun to change. The same Hollywood that once silenced him was now embracing honesty, individuality, and acceptance. In his final interviews, Scott alluded to this shift with a bittersweet smile. "Maybe I was born in the wrong time," he said, "but I'm glad to see people can be themselves now. I wish I'd had that chance." When Randolph Scott passed away on March 2, 1987 at the age of 89, he left behind not only a legacy of cinematic greatness, but also a life story marked by emotional struggle and quiet resilience. In the years following his death, those who knew him best began to share the truth he had so carefully hidden: that behind the iconic cowboy was a man of sensitivity, introspection, and deep humanity. His painful secret was not one of scandal, but of sorrow. The sorrow of a man who spent his life playing heroes while silently yearning for acceptance. Today, Randolph Scott's story stands as both a tribute and a lesson. His films captured the mythic ideal of the American West, but his life revealed the far more complex truth of what it meant to live authentically in a time when doing so could cost everything. As he once said, "Courage isn't just facing a gunman in the street, sometimes it's facing yourself." In the end, Randolph Scott's true heroism was not just in his roles, but in the quiet dignity with which he bore the pain of a secret he could never fully share. Until the world was finally ready to understand, Sir Randolph Scott, one of Hollywood's most enduring and beloved Western stars, passed away in 1987 at the age of 89, leaving behind a legacy that symbolized both rugged masculinity and quiet dignity.